At last month's EGX London, the team and I headed over to check out some of gaming's latest offerings. Eurogamer's flagship expo was packed as per usual, with people, merch, devs, press and of course games. Everything was there, from AAAs to indie startups, like tiny indie startups, and all of the stands were packed, with just everyone so enthusiastic about the games. Of course, Xbox and PlayStation did their normal dick measuring competition to see who had the biggest and best dedicated stands. Now, while of course playing on all of the highly anticipated, not yet released titles that we've been dreaming of was awesome, there was something that I've been particularly excited about getting my hands on, and that was the Oculus Rift VR headset. I'm sure you've probably heard of that. You see, because for me, since being a kid, virtual reality has always been this incredible invention dangling just out of reach. I remember watching Johnny Quest run around Quest World, wishing more than anything that I could go to. I hated his friend who always got to do everything just because he was his mate. As I grew up, it became one of those great unobtainable techs, like Martin McFly's hoverboard, stolen hoverboard, or Tom Cruise's special super cool haptic gloves from Minority Report. I, for one, vividly remember my first experience of virtual reality, like the reality of virtual reality. My parents took me to that Sega World arcade in London when that was a thing. I spent the whole day playing all the then cutting-edge VR games. It was back when VR headsets had pipes coming out of the back of them. I mean, seriously, actual pipes. I don't know if they needed them, but they definitely had them. Needless to say, as much fun as it was, and how I wouldn't shut up about it for absolutely weeks afterwards, it was kind of pants. The controls were clunky, the 3D had lag, and it was very disorientating. It wasn't quite the ultimate immersive experience that it had claimed to be. Nevertheless, over the years, virtual reality has still become ingrained in pop culture. From that crazy Existence film with Jude Law, to everyone's favourite badass / trenchcoat wearer, Neo and his Matrix. VR is lauded up as this incredible experience, but unfortunately every single real world example of it to date is just crap. Ends up being so disappointing. Since back when the Rift first started gaining major traction back in 2012 with their Kickstarter campaign, I've been really keen to have a go on one myself. As you probably know already, the Oculus is arguably one of the most successful Kickstarters to date, smashing its intended goal of up to $250,000, and they ended up getting $2.5 million. Since then, it's continued to gain interest, backers and investment, so much so that even Zuckerberg got interested. You've probably heard that back in March this year, Facebook acquired it for a massive $2 billion. It's on that scale. That rocketed the already hugely successful platform into having a real stake in the future of the entertainment industry as a whole. Not to mention that it now has the potential to revolutionise the way we play as core gamers, the way we play video games. Right, so that's enough gushing. Back to the show floor at EGX. And in the dedicated Oculus area, they had the latest of the dev kits, the DK2s. These things have like HD resolution and unbelievably low latency. Needless to say, I was at full nerd boner. So, did it live up to the hype? And the short answer for me, at least, is yes. Here's why. Firstly, I was lucky. Out of all the playable games on the Oculus stand, I got to play that one that I wanted, Valkyrie. It's an arcade space dogfighter from developer CPP. They're the guys and girls that brought us the sci-fi MMO Eve, of course. Thing is, this game was literally purpose-built for VR. It was originally made as a tech demo to be used with the Oculus just for fun, just to see how it worked. It ended up garnering so much attention that CCP decided to start production on it as an actual game. That's how awesome it is. It was perfect for use with something like virtual reality or Oculus, because my character was sat stationary in his seat, reflecting what I was doing in the real world. That totally eliminated that alienating feeling people have said concerns them with VR. You see, apparently as soon as, and I can totally imagine it, as soon as you're, gripping a controller and you move your character, it snaps you out of that immersion. Some have said that they've even experienced like disorientation and even nausea. Having said that, The same, I've heard the same from people when they experience like 3D IMAXs, and in my opinion that's incredible. So maybe it's just not for some people, and that's okay. In my experience, and I can obviously only talk about that, once I put on that visor and headset, I honestly found myself completely immersed. I was sat in my fighter on some battleship in some launch tube with a countdown in my ear from my commander signalling my impending launch. Instinctively, I'd look around to get bearings on my surroundings. The tight cockpit felt claustrophobic to me. Looking down, I could see my hands on the controls. I gripped the pad and waited to be launched into some dogfighting frenzy. I wasn't wrong. The ensuing battle was, to me, worthy of any sci-fi series. Right at that moment, I was Apollo in my Viper Mark 7, and these were Cylon Raiders. I actually found that once in flight, I didn't really look around that much. But when I did, it was incredibly useful and actually genuinely immersive. My peripheral vision was completely filled with this cockpit and the windows and space outside it. An enemy fighter would like scream past me, and if I'd like lose them, I'd be able to whip round my head and bam, got you. I could like actually see them just off the right side of my ship. The perspective and this clarity in Oculus's high definition 3D made me really feel the pressure as a ship getting closer and closer to me. Seeing the bullet whiz past, I like genuinely felt like excited about it. By the end of the experience, I felt pretty much violated. I was dizzy from spinning and banking my ship continuously in an attempt to outmaneuver my opponents. So look, I wasn't nauseous or dizzy from just the Oculus, I was dizzy because of what I was doing in the game. It was a really good thing. I'm happy to say also that my wingman and I returned victorious. Both managed to survive, and we took out all the enemy fighters. It was at that point actually on the show floor that me and a complete stranger like laughed, shook hands and hugged as if we were Wedge and Skywalker dressed up in our orange jumpsuits on a return flight from Alderaan. But, well, maybe not Alderaan, that's gone. But anyway, so evidently mine was a very, very positive experience. I'm going to throw over to Callum now, and we're going to get some of his thoughts on VR and the Oculus Rift itself when he got his hands on Creative Assembly's first-person hider, Alien Isolation. This is one seriously scary looking game, and I kind of embarrassed myself at the show, almost falling off my chair.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I made it across. It's really bad here, Verlaine. I think there's something here.
This was my first experience of the new generation of survival horror games, having missed out on such internet classics as Amnesia, Outlast, and more recently PT, the interactive trailer for Silent Hill. Having played Alien Isolation on both the conventional controller and TV setup, and being lucky enough to have played it on the Oculus, I can safely say that this game nails it. It's undeniably beautiful, with some of the best cinematics I've ever seen. The soundscape alone is enough to shake those with even the toughest resolve, with its heard but not seen dynamic. And the AI is some of the most brilliantly frustrating in gaming history, an unkillable, almost unavoidable, learning xenomorphic machine.
I think it's close, Ricardo.
Watch yourself, Ripley.
I do have a couple of issues with the Oculus platform, and as far as I'm concerned, there's some pretty major ones. Firstly, and most importantly, using Oculus with a controller for me is a fundamental flaw. It took me right out of the game. I felt like I was playing with the TV a few inches away from my face, and the familiarity of the controller made any emotions I was experiencing slightly diminished. Don't get me wrong, the clarity was fantastic, and I never felt uncomfortable looking around. I suppose just having the comfort of the controller made the Oculus less effective. Secondly, and again this is a pretty major flaw in my opinion, is that for me to be able to see Ripley's motion sensor clearly, I had to have my camera tilted down towards the bottom left hand side of the screen, meaning that everything in the top and especially top right of the screen became very difficult to see and focus on. Don't get me wrong, this might have been a problem with the setup, but either way, it's a pretty big failing for such a big title. Even with those little flaws, the Oculus does really enhance some aspects of the game. The panic you feel when an 8-foot tall xenomorph is bearing down on you is one of the most intense emotional experiences a game has ever gone out of me. And running down a corridor only to be lifted off your feet, losing all control apart from your vision, much like, I imagine, it would have been if Ripley had been replaced by Stephen Hawking in the original movies, is nothing less than terrifying. All in all, experiencing Alien Isolation through the Oculus was a real treat. If they ironed out my personal issues with the format, this would be a horror survival game for the history books, and a real example of the power of VR and Oculus.
So, you've heard what we think, and now we're going to pass over to you guys. What are you excited for?
Christmas!
Like, are you excited about VR at all? Do you think it's the future? Do you think that it will actually genuinely change up the way that core gamers like us play games?
Hell yeah!
What are you guys excited about? Is there anything particular that you want to play? Or are you just waiting like us for the inevitable sexy time games? Maybe like Sandra Bullock or... No? Alright, cool.
Dame Helen Mirren.
Well, cadets, we'd love to hear from you. I mean, that's the whole point of this, really. So please just join in the discussion on our subreddit, or of course on Twitter or Facebook. Thanks so much for listening, and catch you next time on Control or Defeat.